Hello, my name is Vianca Cortes. I decided to do my presentation on Down syndrome. So what is Down syndrome? So Down syndrome is a condition in which a person has an extra chromosome. Typically, a baby will be born with 46 chromosomes. Babies with Down syndrome have an extra copy of chromosome 21. This additional copy will alter the development of the baby's body and brain, posing mental and physical challenges for the individual. According to the CDC, approximately 1 in every 700 babies, or 6,000 babies a year, are born with Down syndrome in the United States. This makes Down syndrome the most common chromosomal condition. Okay, so there are 3 types of Down syndrome. The most common type of Down syndrome is also known as trisomy 21, and this will account for 95% of cases. And in this type of Down syndrome, all cells have an extra copy of chromosome 21. The second type of Down syndrome is mosaicism Down syndrome, which accounts for 2% of all cases. And in this case, some cells have 3 copies of chromosome 21 and others will have 2 copies. And the last type of Down syndrome is translocation, and that accounts for 3% of all cases. And this is where a whole extra chromosome 21 is present, however, it is attached to a different chromosome rather than it being its own separate one. So as you guys can see in the picture, here you have trisomy 21, and you can see there's an extra chromosome here. In this one, this is where you see some cells will have a normal number of chromosome, and then some cells will have an extra chromosome 21. And then in translocation, as you can see here, here's chromosome 21. However, the other extra chromosome has translocated or moved to a different part, a different chromosome. Okay. So now let's take a look at how trisomy 21 occurs. As discussed in class, normally a mom and a dad will contribute 23 chromosomes, totaling 46 chromosomes in the fertilized embryo. So as you guys can see here, like the normal cell division, so you have mom, and you have dad, and then fertilization, and then the baby has 46 chromosomes, and you go through the process of mitosis to create new cells. However, with trisomy 21, a process called non-disjunction will occur in either one of mom or dad's gamete cells. Non-disjunction basically means that the sister chromatids fail to separate during anaphase of either meiosis 1 or 2. This means in trisomy 21, either the egg or the sperm will contribute an extra copy of chromosome 21. So looking at this diagram, I will use mom as the example where non-disjunction occurred. So, for example, we will say here with mom that non-disjunction occurred in meiosis 1. Remember, non-disjunction can also occur in meiosis 2. So for meiosis 1, now because of that non-disjunction, we have a chromosome that has an egg cell that has 22 chromosomes and one that has 24. Now, let's say dad's sperm fuses with a cell that has an extra copy of chromosome 21. Then the combined cell will have an extra copy of chromosome 21. So here we have dad and mom, fertilization occurs, they make a baby, now you have 47 chromosomes. This extra chromosome is what gives babies Down syndrome. And keep in mind, this can also occur in the opposite way, so dad can be the one with the extra chromosome, and if mom's egg fuses with dad's, then that'll create Down syndrome. Alright, so now let's look at the most common signs and symptoms associated with Down syndrome. So individuals with Down syndrome will have most of these types of traits, which include almond-shaped eyes, a flat face, a short neck, a protruding tongue, small hands and feet, poor muscle tone, and they tend to be shorter in height. They also have mild to moderate cognitive impairment, and all of these are basically, it all depends on the individual. So you guys can see here in this picture, here are like some of the things like to look for in people that have Down syndrome. So because Down syndrome has an effect on almost every organ system in the body, for that reason, people with Down syndrome will tend to have a lot of health risks, such as congenital heart defects, early onset of dementia, hearing loss, hypothyroidism, obesity, and other things like leukemia, sleep apnea, again, because their tongue tends to be a little bit bigger. So that's why they'll develop sleep apnea. They also they tend to get sick a lot more often. Alright, so how do we diagnose individuals with Down syndrome? So diagnosing someone with Down syndrome can occur either before they are born or at birth. Diagnosing a baby before it is born is done either through screening or using diagnostic tests. So screening tests will estimate the chance of having Down syndrome, but it is not 100% accurate. So doctors will perform either a blood test, which basically will take the parent's blood, and they will look at a quantity of various substances in that blood, or the doctors will also use a sonogram to look at specific characteristics associated with Down syndrome. So screening is a non-invasive way to diagnose Down syndrome. However, keep in mind it is not 100% accurate. The next type of test here is a diagnostic test, and they provide a definitive diagnosis with almost 100% accuracy. There are two types of diagnostics tests typically performed. This includes the chronic villus sampling, as you guys can see in this picture here. Chronic villus sampling is basically where you will get a biopsy of placental cells, and it is done by inserting something into mom's vagina, and then they basically get a little sample of the placenta cells. The second type of diagnostic test is amniocentesis, and this is where you will take a needle and insert it through mom's belly to get a sample of the amniotic fluid, as you can see here. Both of these procedures, like I said, are almost 100% accurate. However, they are invasive, and sometimes a lot of people won't do it because there is a small chance of miscarrying. And then the other way you can diagnose is obviously at birth. So babies with Down syndrome can be identified at birth because of the presence of like their physical characteristics, like I mentioned before, like the protruding tongue, the almond eyes. But doctors will also do a chromosomal analysis just to confirm the diagnosis. Okay, so risk factors. So a mother's age at birth is the only risk factor linked to Down syndrome. So the risk of having a child with Down syndrome increases as mother's age increases, especially once the mom is over the age of 35. Then their chance of having a baby with Down syndrome will increase. So prevention. So researchers cannot prevent the chromosomal errors associated with Down syndrome. I didn't find anything on how they can prevent it. Okay, so new insights. So to learn more about how Down syndrome affects the pathogenesis of disease, researchers have been using mice to get a better understanding on Down syndrome. So recent studies show that mice with Down syndrome have learning and memory phenotypes like those with kids with Down syndromes, and it has been proposed that overexpression of the HSA21 genes may contribute to learning deficits. They are also studying mice also suggests that trisomy of genes, especially zinc finger protein, may contribute to congenital heart defects many people with Down syndrome face. Okay, so now we're going to move on to treatments. So there is no treatment for people with Down syndrome. As I mentioned before, Down syndrome is a genetic disorder, and you're basically born with it. So there's no medication, there's no therapy, nothing that will make this disease go away. However, there are services early in life that often aim at helping babies and children with Down syndrome to improve their physical and intellectual abilities. Some of these services include therapies such as speech, occupational, and physical therapy. You also have prescription medication for some of the diseases associated with Down syndrome. And then also there's surgeries for those with physical issues associated with Down syndrome, such as like heart defects, or they have like a cleft lip, or if they're cross-eyed. So surgeries can help these physical issues. And I chose this picture because I think it's very interesting, and I like how it says that each person with Down syndrome has different talents and the ability to thrive. So just because someone is diagnosed with Down syndrome doesn't mean that they can't be an active member of our society. As you can see here, they can learn how to play the violin. They can, work. They can also have a job. I personally have a cousin who has Down syndrome, and she has a job, and she's also part of the Special Olympics. And it really blows me away on how much she has accomplished despite her having Down syndrome. And then moving on, these are a list of my references. So I hope you guys enjoyed my PowerPoint. Thank you.